installing Marlin's rock solid fab JLU cage system. As you can see, we've got most of the main structure pretty well kind of tacked together. We use a lot of the components to kind of position everything, and then we end up tack welding the feet at the A pillars and the D pillar, and then we just kind of install these. This is the solution here, but that holds your width while everything goes together. We double check the square at the B post, so make sure the whole entire structure is square left to right. There's no issues there. And then we go ahead and tack in the X brace. That way it really makes sure the middle part of the cage is good and straight. And then we'll kind of work our way to the back and then work our way to the front to make sure everything goes together nice. And then we have to flip the windshield up and put in the cross member that the visors and the windshield and all that bolts to. So that's kind of the last piece that goes in. But for now, we're going to move on to probably getting this rear piece kind of put into place and go from there. So we're making some progress. It's looking good. We made a tremendous amount of progress yesterday on Marlin's cage and his JL. And there's a couple of pointers that I just wanted to go over real quick with you guys. Some common questions that we get from other shops installing this cage. And things that I cannot stress enough when you start doing this. First of all, we give you like a 30-page instruction manual. We email it to you. You can print it off. It is so, I cannot stress this enough. It is so important that you follow that step by step, because if you skip around or if you do something wrong, it is incredibly hard to go back and fix those mistakes. So a couple of the main things to keep in mind, especially when you're putting your brackets and stuff in, make sure that you have cleaned out your floor. You don't want any kind of mud or gravel or anything underneath this bracket. It has to fit against the floor sheet metal 100% flat. Another thing to keep in mind is when this is done right and the height is all set, the top of the tube will be flush with the top of the B post. That is so that when you put your top back on, it is the same height as it was from the factory. When you weld your nut in here, the top is going to be in the proper location, so your doors and everything will fit the same. That's super important. It's completely normal to have to pull this cage into place with ratchet straps. We made everything tight, that way your gaps are good, everything's nice and sturdy, it's rigid, and it kind of helps hold itself in place once you get it tack welded into position. Moving on to the front, the most critical aspect of the entire front install is this piece right here. This is your factory cross member that came out of the OEM cage. It holds the windshield. If this piece does not get cut out properly, then you're not going to be able to fit it to the new cage the way it's supposed to. So as you can see here, we've got a nice gap. Before when we first cut this out and fit it in, there's actually a gap here, so you have to take a hammer and a dolly or a piece of wood or even a C-clamp and pull this down so that you get a nice weldable gap in there. And then if you do the inside and you take your time, the inside gap meets up perfect too. So that has to be ground out and fit to the roll cage, the new cage tubing. But the whole time before you fully weld it, you need to have the windshield on it and continually check it to make sure that the door gap is proper from top to bottom, which if you follow the instructions, it mentions that. And you're supposed to take a measurement, and I always take pictures even of the door gap before you do anything. That way, you know, when you shut the doors and fold the windshield back and you have it bolted in, if that gap isn't right, you know you need to work this piece down some more to make sure that the gap stays the same as it was from the factory. That is super critical because all the top panels, the freedom panels, they attach to this. They're located by this. The windshield is located by this. The door gap is located by this. This piece controls how well everything is going to fit when you put it all back together. So it cannot be stressed enough as to how important it is to make sure this piece is where it's supposed to be. That is the most important part about installing this whole cage, is that piece right there. So make sure you do that right. If you're going to do this yourself at home in your garage, just take your time. The instructions are very well detailed, and of course we're always here to answer questions. If you need to call us, the phone number's in there. Give me a shout. It comes directly to my cell phone. You can call me anytime and I can help walk you through it. But that is the most important things about this cage, is to make sure you follow the instructions. And the most critical part about the actual assembly is making sure that this piece is right. So, but as you see, everything's literally just tacked together. There's a couple of tacks on every node and that's it. Because if we have to move something, right now it's not a big deal. We can just break the tacks loose and move it. It's easy. So the next step for us, we're gonna tack weld the hoop in, get the last 4 or 5 pieces of tubing in the Jeep, and then Marlon's gonna go get the top. We're gonna set it on, mark our holes in the top, make sure everything fits good, and then we're gonna finish welding it out. So. Check as much as you can along the way. That's the best advice I have for you guys.
That's the key.
Anyway, so thanks for watching, and we're gonna get this thing knocked out.
All right. And this is how it looks, and just in case you want to have a reference or whatever. Basically, this is for the cable right here. This is how the rear is supposed to look.
And then of course there's an option like a crossbar that goes in here. If you order our shelf option, there is a crossbar that goes from this node to that node on the other side, and it actually sits on here and on that back plate. And there's a couple of mounts that run front to back for it to set on as well for bolts. So that's just an option that we have.
And when you cut this, you are supposed to leave it like that. You don't have to cut it all the way, because that's something that you cut the first time and you didn't have to.
Exactly. So if you're putting the factory plastic back in the Jeep, there's no need to cut this off any lower than this, because the plastic's going to come above it anyway. And this also, if you're going to run the factory seat belts in the back, you need this here because that's how they attach. So I always just leave this in. If you were going to like bed line it or something, then it wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and cut it off lower just so it's cleaner. But if you're putting the factory plastic back in, there's absolutely no need to take this out. It's just extra work for no reason.
Yeah.
So.
And again, this is how it's supposed to look. If you see the top portion is like bend this side, but the lower section is bend this side, so you can have more leg room. Oh, that's it. It was pretty easy to install, to be honest.
I mean, we worked on it about 6 hours yesterday, and when we started, all we had done was the mounting plates installed.
Yep.
So we some of the tubes had a little surface rust on them, so we cleaned that off just so we make sure we get good welds everywhere. We cleaned that off and just started with the 2 main hoops. Of course, we slug these so that it keeps this node lined up and you don't have any irregularity between the 2 tubes. So that's got a slug in it. You slide those 2 together, and then per the instructions, use a zip tie just to kind of hold it up, help stabilize it while you start fitting your crossbars in. So we put this one in the middle, put a strap around it to hold that there. And we put this one in the front to set that width. We put this one in the back to set the width back there. A couple of ratchet straps around it to hold everything. And then start setting the square on it. So we'll go from that corner down to the floor and this corner down to the floor and make sure everything's the same distance left to right. And once you do that, I think we went ahead and tacked the B-pillar bar at the top and the bottom. Then we, after that, we fit the crossbar, the seatbelt bar for the front, and then did the X bracing. And so one way to know for sure if you've got it square is to make sure that these bars line up on the nodes. But even that's not 100% foolproof, because if this tube is slightly twisted, you can't even see it with the naked eye, but if it's off just a little bit, it could change the center of your seatbelt bar, I mean, 1/8 of an inch. And then that's gonna make these lines off. So it's very critical to actually check it with a tape measure from one side to the other, because it's more important that the tubes are centered in the Jeep and square than it is if this is off 1/16 of an inch. Nobody's gonna know. But the big thing is to make sure that the main structure is square in the Jeep, because that's what everything, the top and the windshield frame and all that, they go from off of that squareness. So it's important to have that.
Yep. So I hope this video can help you guys. Let us know in the comments if you have any other questions so we can answer. But yep, this is how it goes. This is how it looks.
It's really nice.
Yep, it is.
You'll be able to fasten your freedom panels to this cage just like you do the factory one. Hardtop works, sound bar works.
Some visors.
Sun visors, all the factory. That's why we chose to keep that cross member, is because you still have all the adjustment from the factory, like your the top that you have.
Yeah, the clear lid.
That works with this because it keeps that factory cross member. If you changed it, if you had a fabricated mount to hold all that stuff, it's not going to work. Yeah. So with our design, that's the biggest reason we decided to keep that piece, is just because you can keep your visors, you can keep your factory mirror, yeah. You can keep like all the stuff that makes a JL, we retained it. So all the interior plastic up there stays, the dash all goes back in. If you use OEM half doors, you can run the upper and lower B-pillar plastic. With the aftermarket half doors, it's kind of cut in a weird place. So we typically only run the lower plastic with aftermarket half doors. But all the back plastics go in. You can run a factory seat, front and rear. Even with the way this is, if you run in the factory rear seat and you want to fold it forward.
Okay, what about this? Because I didn't know about this, and you mentioned that you need to take a picture and send it to the company.
It's ECS decals. They will make this piece for you. So they're licensed by Mopar to reproduce these decals. They do it mostly for the collision industry. So if you was to get hit in the side of your Jeep and they had to paint this or fix it or whatever, they would have to replace this decal. Well, you can't buy that from the dealership. That's one of the few things that they don't actually sell. So when I did ours and I went to purchase this decal from the dealer, they told me they can't do it. So they gave me contact to ECS Decal. It's ecsvin.com, I think, like ECSVIN. Anyway, they put me in contact with them. It was like $100 for the first time. They design it and print it, and it even has the FCA reflective backing just like this. It's literally the exact same sticker. And then what I do, because we're end up cutting this about at the bottom of this gray line here, so it's going to go right through the middle of that. However, there's enough room below the cut. There's kind of a divot here. If you move this decal down when we get the new one, it'll actually be underneath that cut. So I like to have that made. Some people don't care, but if you do, if you have emissions in your county or your state, a lot of times they scan that. Or like in our case, when we do alignments, our alignment machine will scan that and it'll tell you what it is and what the specs are supposed to be. So it's good to have that barcode. You cut it in half, it doesn't work, obviously. So have this remade, you can move it down. if you ever get stopped by a cop, or if your Jeep ever got stolen, God forbid, if your Jeep got stolen, that VIN number, it's good to have that plate on there. So,
Yep. All right, I think that's everything, right?
I believe so. I can't think of much anything else that we need to go over, but like Marlon said, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We follow up with them. Be happy to answer them. If you got any fun, or if you want to call us and talk to us about it, if you got questions, concerns, comments, just feel free to reach out to us and we'll get them taken care of.
All right, guys. So I hope you liked the video. See you later.